These transfers are going to have the biggest impact for each team as the 2026 season quickly approaches. These are my picks for the top 10 impact transfers for the 2026 season. Hello, everyone. I am Lucas Hill here of the Southern Sports Scene. Make sure you all do us a favor, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notification so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or post a new short here on the Southern Sports Scene. Every live show brought to you by our good friends over at FrostBuddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com, use code SSS15 to get 15% off of your first purchase on all cups, tumblers, mugs, whatever it is. That's code SSS15 to get 15% off your first purchase. Also, thank you to our friends over at Chike Nutrition. 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of sugar. You can get every day started with our good friends at Chike Nutrition. Click the link below. Get yourself 10% off. Going from 10 and going up from there, man. So, first of all, the biggest thing that Indiana did this past year to be a championship contender, really put them over the edge, was the way that their offensive line played later on in the season. And they absolutely dominated, especially when it came to being a balanced team, protecting a guy like Fernando Mendoza. And I thought they did a phenomenal job in the college football playoff run and in the Big Ten championship. I thought they really did a pretty good job for the most part. Now you lose a good bit of your guys. You lose guys that were staples on your offensive line this past year, guys that you obviously are going to miss. You're going to miss guys like Pat Coogan, who is a big factor on your offensive line. MVP of the Rose Bowl. As funny as it may seem, guys, he was a really, really good center. One of the top centers in all of college football, ends up as a 6th-round draft pick. Really, really good offensive lineman. You lose a guy like Khalil Benson, who was phenomenal. Really big staple on the offensive line. And that was a big, big need for you. And I know that initially started at Indiana, transfers to Colorado for a year. And guess what? Ends up coming in for the season. Ends up at right tackle. That was a massive get for him. I thought for the most part had a pretty solid season. Now you get a guy like Joe Brunner. The biggest part of that interior offensive line that you obviously need to address was there. You're going to lose guys that are now in the portal. That's obviously a big get. Obviously something that was going to happen at some point in time. But what did you go out and get? You got a big need, and that was offensive line. Joe Brunner is a really good offensive lineman. Coming in from Wisconsin, was part of an offensive line that only allowed 13 sacks. That was the fewest in the Big Ten this past season. And Brunner was a big part of that. Big-bodied guy, 6'7", 313 pounds. I think that his lateral quickness is better than what most guards his size are going to have at his level. Finishes through blocks. Is a nasty dude. Has some really good left twitch as well. So he's going to fit in well with the Indiana culture. I think he's one of those guys that gets his lunchbox every day and just goes to work. That's what I get from him. I thought he was phenomenal this past year as a pass blocker at Wisconsin, and I think he's going to translate really well for a guy that is in your backfield like Josh Hoover, who, in my opinion, could be better than Fernando Mendoza. That's a video for another day. And by the way, you can get my full breakdown of that if you go to my State of the Program series on Indiana. Number 9, I have James Smith coming in from Alabama. Now is at Ohio State. 12 starts this past year, and he was a massive contributor for that offensive line. I thought he was dominant this past year. Had a breakout last 2 years and really, really showed himself as a force on the offensive line or the defensive line. He's going to be able to get his hands up, get big PBUs, dominates the interior of the trenches. And what is Ohio State going to need in 2026? I think the interior of your offense, of your defensive line, is going to take a big hit. So what did Ohio State do? They went out in the portal and they got dudes. You're going to lose guys like Tyrone Malcolm. You're going to lose Caden Curry. You're going to lose Caden McDonald. All three of those guys, big-time defensive linemen, they're gone. So who do you go out and get? You get guys like James Smith. I mean, a force in the middle. A force that, quite honestly, is going to make an impact. 6'3", 230 pounds. There's been games where it's hard not to notice 23. It's hard. Make no mistake about that. He's had games where he has made his name known. You look at the bowl game against Michigan a couple years ago. You look at what he did this past year against a team like Georgia. Had a really, really solid game in the SEC championship game. Did get a targeting penalty, though, in the first time that they played. I thought that Tennessee game was really where he dominated. That was a pretty good Tennessee offensive line, too, that had a veteran offensive line up front. And what did they do? He absolutely dominated. 7 tackles and a sack. Probably his best game of the season. Smith is going to be that anchor that Caden McDonald was. That's a big shoe to fill. Really, I was thinking about naming this the biggest shoes to fill in college football. But I think that, impact transfers kind of translate well. That's what James Smith is. What he's going to bring to Ohio State is going to make this defensive line just as good, if not better, than where they were this past year. Let's go to number 8 in J.J. Buchanan. J.J. Buchanan made a massive impact at Utah this past year with a good, phenomenal quarterback in Devon Dampier. That was his go-to guy on in big-time situations. He is a red zone threat that is going to make every big catch. He's a guy that gets 2-3 receptions a game, but he turns them into 15, 20-yard plays. He's a matchup nightmare for linebackers. He's got the speed and he's got the size. 6'4", 208 pounds as a freshman. Kind of insane to think about for a tight end. Is he a bit undersized? Yes. The good news is that he got the offseason. Ends up at Michigan, puts on 20-plus pounds. Couldn't ask for anything better. Because he came out of Coronado High School at 200 pounds. This guy was a top 5 athlete at one point in the nation not too long ago. And what does he do? He just makes big plays. Guys, he played receiver in high school. Makes the transition to tight end because he's such a big body. And he's such a phenomenal athlete that he can make big plays anywhere that he's on the field. I think J.J. Buchanan is going to be one of these tight ends that Michigan is going to be talking about for some time. Michigan prides themselves on the tight end. If you can't take my word for it, look at the previous couple of seasons that Michigan has had good freaking tight ends. You just got to be honest with yourself and look at it. You look at guys that came through. A.J. Barner, phenomenal tight end not too long ago. Just won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. You want to talk about guys like Colston Loveland that had a phenomenal season. That was a first-round draft pick. One of the best tight ends in the nation a couple years ago. You look at what Michigan lost this past year in their tight end room when it came to a guy like Marlon Klein. Marlon Klein was a really solid tight end for the most part. Ends up being a top 100 draft pick. He's had big moments, but I don't think he's as good as what J.J. Buchanan is going to bring to your tight end room in 2026. Number 7 is Jacarius Peak from the transfer in from North Carolina State, who's now at South Carolina. The biggest point of emphasis on South Carolina's team this year is offensive line. They were one of the worst offensive lines in the country this past year. It was a disaster for them. They need a staple at left tackle. And by the way, their entire offensive line went into the portal. 0 returning offensive linemen this year. You go out in the portal, you get one of the best offensive tackles in the country in Jacarius Peak. I've been following Jacarius Peak ever since he was at Grayson High School out in, or not Grayson, when he was at, he was the title of Titletown High. That was the Netflix show, Valdosta High School. When he was at Valdosta High School not too long ago, and he was just a phenomenal football player. You got to understand what kind of guy we're talking about. Now, he is dealing with an injury. He could be higher, but again, I'm not worried about that. Past year was an honorable mention All-ACC. Guys, he does not miss, or he does not give up a lot of sacks. Had a knockdown and 9 pancakes against North Carolina. 50 pancake blocks and 18 knockdowns. Was one of the best pass blockers in the ACC this past year. Second highest ranked pass blocker at left tackle. Phenomenal athlete. And has 2 years of starting experience on the team. Played a good bit in his redshirt freshman year. Guys, he is going to be a phenomenal football player and a big, big piece that South Carolina obviously needs to build on their roster from what they essentially didn't have. Essentially didn't build correctly this past year. It's a complete overhaul. It starts at left tackle. Jacarius Peak is going to be a phenomenal asset that South Carolina desperately needs at this point. Number 6, I have Coy Perch. He's the transfer from Minnesota that's now at Oregon. Dylan Thieneman is gone. I think you got Dylan Thieneman 2.0. No, it's not because he's just white. He's white too. I promised you that. If that was the case, then we would be having a pretty interesting conversation. But the only reason I say this is because I genuinely believe that when you and I are talking at the end of the day, we're going to be looking at Coy Perch as one of the best safeties in college football. And I know that there is a lot of people that may agree or disagree. Guys, he was an All-American 2 years ago as a freshman. First team All-Big Ten as a freshman. It's bottom line. Now, here's the thing. I think Parrish had a lot of pressure on him because in 2000, you look at last year, he had a lot more responsibility. He didn't have that extra cushion. He was basically handed the keys to the defense and said, hey, this is your team. You got to be able to handle all of this. Obviously, it wasn't really good because early on, pretty much had his snaps reduced. But did end up making some key plays at the end of the day. Ends up in another All-Big Ten selection, which is why he's at Oregon now. I think that he won't have to worry about that, especially because I don't think that he's going to be on special teams much this year. I can promise you that. I think because of that, he's going to have a lot less in his plate. He's going to worry about only what goes on when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, so that he doesn't have that added pressure, unlike what he had this past year at Minnesota. He's a phenomenal athlete. Make no mistake about that. Koy is going to have a phenomenal season. I really believe that. He's one of the best safeties in all of college football. I firmly believe that. His tenacity and his itch for the football, he's going to wholly be on defense. I think that's where he fits best. He's a guy that obviously was a two-way player at one point. I think that his best days are going to be at safety. That's where he fits best in this Oregon offense. Bottom line. Number 5 is Drew Mestemaker. He's the only quarterback I have on this list because the top 2 quarterbacks that are ahead of him right now in Sam Leavitt, number 1, he's dealing with an injury. And to be honest, it's not that concerning, but I mean, you look at where there's more of an impact that's going to get made because of what is the talent that's around him brings to the table. That's my opinion. You're talking about a guy that's going to go into a situation in Mestemaker. He's got the same offensive scheme. He's got the same weapons around him. He knows these guys. It's basically North Texas out in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's the bottom line. Is it a bad thing? No. I think that Mestemaker is going to go in, and this is a team that's going to really flip the script on what Oklahoma State was this past season. They're going to be better. They're going to be more disciplined. They're going to have more opportunities ahead of them to be fundamentally sound. That's the bottom line. And that is all that should matter when we talk about a guy like him and the impact that he brings at Oklahoma State. Instantaneous. It's not just to a team, it's to a fan base that has had to go through mediocre offenses the last 2 years. So obviously the pressure is going to be on Eric Morris in year number 1 because they've had to deal with 21 years of Mike Gundy, and it's been great years at times. But guys, the last 2 years have been abysmal. It was time to move on, and it was about time that they moved on. So now that he's going into a much better situation that he's a lot more comfortable with, I really believe that he's going to be able to deliver expectations that are obviously going to be higher at Oklahoma State. Number 4 is Cam Coleman. What was Texas's biggest weakness this past year? You could say it was offensive line. You could say it was your run game. That was abysmal. I was thinking about putting Hollywood Smothers on there. But I think also when you add a big playmaker like Cam Coleman, it's hard to deny just the athlete that he is and how dynamic he is. Just how incredible of an athlete that Cam is. Make no mistake. When you put Cam Coleman into a offense that is as wide open and as dynamic as Steve Sarkisian's, what does that tell you? That tells me that things are going to get significantly better when it comes to the comfortability that Arch Manning has in delivering to a playmaker like him. Comes to having guys that are around him that obviously can be decoys at times. Guys, when you put Cam Coleman on your roster, you're basically putting a guy that you got to have all eyes on. You have to. How many big plays did Cam Coleman make this past year that ultimately helped Auburn stay in games? A lot. Crazy as it sounds, it's hard to deny that. Cam Coleman is a phenomenal athlete. The biggest thing that he fills in when it comes to the Texas receiving game is his ability to create separation on routes, and his footwork is some of the best in college football. That's how amazing of an athlete this guy is. Number 3, I have Damon Wilson. Goodbye, Akeem Mesidor. Goodbye, Ruben Bain. Hello, Damon Wilson. Damon Wilson is an absolute freak of nature at edge. Guys, his first step is crazy. It is insane. 23 tackles and 9 sacks. Does he need to do better in the run game? Yes. Does he need to be better when it comes to disguising himself, putting him back into coverage, things like that? Obviously, yes. But here is the thing. I think there's so much that was done when it came to his, shall we say, the way that he was utilized at Missouri. It's going to translate well when he pairs along with a Hall of Famer, really 2 Miami Hall of Famers that are very popular, very, very popular when we talk about a guy like Damian Lewis that coaches D-line and Jason Taylor that's also there. He just fits in he just is a complete asset that Miami needs off the edge. That's a big role to fill. Ruben Bain is not easy to replace. Make no mistake about that. But when you get a guy with the same type of skill set, but in my opinion, faster and quicker, holy cow, things will get really freaking deep when we talk about this team. When we talk about where Miami could be at the end of the day. Number 2, I have Jordan Seaton. Another big asset that a team like LSU needed this past year. This was the second worst offensive lineman in the nation in the SEC this past year. Jordan Seaton at left tackle is a mountain. He is a dominant left tackle, and he's a guy that, yes, you hear the hype. Guys, he's really freaking good. He really is. Crazy as it sounds. Really, really solid defensive lineman. A really solid offensive lineman, I should say. And a guy that just finds a way to get himself in headlines when it comes to how dominant he is throughout practice, how dominant he is in games. He doesn't give up a lot of sacks. I don't think he hardly gave up any this past year. Guys, He's shown improvement time after time. It was very impressive. Very, very impressive. And he is as highly valued as any other player in the country. Make no mistake about that. It's absolutely impressive. And you're going to see him very, very, very soon. I know that there is a lot that people are concerned about when it comes to his quickness off the line of scrimmage, how he is at times when it comes to does he take plays off? I haven't seen it. I know some people have mentioned it before. But guys, Jordan Seaton is a really solid offensive lineman. And his make no mistake about this, guys. He was one of those guys that you just did not want to face a whole lot. He's a dominant specimen. He puts that on full display. And number one is a name that you need to look out for. Number one is a name that I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me with. And to be honest with you, I personally really don't care. But it's a name that you and I have got to understand is a freak. He is an absolute freak of nature in the middle. That's Mateen Iberosia. And the stats are not going to wow you. 21 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. And guys, the biggest piece to Texas Tech's dominance on a top-tier defense was the way that their defensive line played. Well, guess what? In 2026, this is what Texas Tech lost. And this is who they're going to get through the portal, by the way. So let's talk about first of who they lost. First of all, you're going to lose your 2 top edge rushers in David Bailey, who went number 2 overall, and Romello Height. Okay, that's out the way. Is it a big loss for you? Yeah, absolutely. Make no mistake about that. Who else did you lose? You lost probably the most dominant interior defensive lineman that I've seen throughout this entire All-Star season, I should say, in Lee Hunter. He's no longer there. So that's a big role that you need to fill. Skylar Gill Howard, that was phenomenal at D-tackle. And now you look at what that defensive line looks like. You lost every single starting defensive lineman that you had this past year. But what did you go get in the portal? You got dudes. You got a lot of big-time dudes. Mateen Iberosia is a phenomenal athlete. When we talk about guys like Adam Trick, who's coming in from Miami of Ohio, had 8.5 sacks this past year with 59 total tackles. Sound offensive lineman, man. Sound defensive lineman, and a guy that's going to be all over the field. You got some big guys like Bryce Butler, who comes in from Washington, and JoJo Johnson that's going to switch between 3 and a 4-eye. He's going to be pretty good at that level. But Mateen Iberosia is a force in the middle. He's a guy that he's not a guy that's going to absorb double teams. You're going to have to get him involved in pass rush too, because his hands are really good. He's got really good hand work. He's a guy that's going to be able to find a way to get off the ball quick. And the way that he's playing right now, from what I'm hearing throughout spring, he's been the most dominant defensive lineman that Texas Tech has right now. And the impact that he could bring at the interior, a position that, quite frankly, Texas Tech needs, is more important than their edge presence, in my opinion. When you have a strong interior defensive lineman, that complements the outside. It really does, crazy as it sounds. I think that Mateen could be as dominant of a defensive tackle that we've seen come from Texas Tech in a very long time, even more dominant than what Lee Hunter and Skylar Gill-Howard left behind. I really believe that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Who do you think is the biggest impactful is going to be the most impactful transfer at the next level? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you do us a favor. Hit the like and share button down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button too. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, post a new video or post a new short here on the Southern Sports Scene. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay blessed. Don't stress. Y'all have a good week.